There's so many good movies from the 2000s. So most of these movies stand out because of the creativity, the acting, the plot line, or the pure creativity put into these works. For example, Night at the Museum, Ice Age, Coraline, James and the Giant Peach, Paranorman, Lava Boy and Shark Girl, Nightmare Before Christmas, and Over the Hedge. Over 50% of the movies I just listed, they are stop motion movies. And if you like the movies that are shown on screen right now, then you are a stop motion fanatic like me. Hi, my name's Haverkamp, and I have loved stop motion movies ever since I was a kid. I think they always really truly stood out from the crowd. And in this 10-minute video, I will be introducing you to the world behind the scenes of stop motion Hollywood. We will dive into the steps of creating a stop motion masterpiece, from choosing the medium itself, the technologies behind that, and the funding. But before we dive into the topic, let's set one thing straight. What's the difference in between stop motion and normal animation? To quickly define the difference in between animation and any type of stop motion is by the medium. Stop motion relies on real-world objects to create the animation you see, while animation is composed of a mixture of 2D and 3D drawings that are typically drawn digitally. For all the examples in this video so far, their main medium has been clay. Here's some other popular works of stop motion that are primarily using clay. For big productions with complex sets, they need consistency with the characters, and it makes sense why this is the chosen material. Clay allows for easy manipulation, precise and small details, and it's strong enough to stand by itself. Other mediums used in big productions can be wire and puppets, but those are a little bit more traditional compared to what we use today. Jinyang Wang is a highly regarded student enrolled at a prestigious fine arts school in China. They look at the materialistic side of stop motion and state that it is necessary to know that the creativity of the work is not only reflected in the plot. In terms of material stop motion, a novel and alternative can be completely used as the idea for the work. This means that really, truly, the material that is used is almost just as important as the plotline and the story itself. Recalling that the definition of stop motion says that it uses all real-world materials. This might inspire unique craft choices like felting, or going back to your classic Legos that you see everywhere to create a fun animation. For a more mature look, like this person did, they included paper cutouts and watercoloring techniques. And finally, some mixed media as seen here, using a toaster as a real-world object and knitting. The truth is, it's the people that are really pushing the definition of stop motion are you and me. I got the chance to interview a small artist that dabbled in stop motion for the very first time. You can see here that this is not made of clay, but rather a new fascinating medium. This was a really personal project for Margaret Peer. She's the artist behind this creation. Just learning cross-stitching from her grandma as a kid not only inspired the medium, but also the story being told. The reference videos her as a kid vlogging in nature. When we were talking about the process, the one thing that really stood out to me was her dedication to detail. Every single one of the frames used was 1 pixel in the original video. She said something that really stuck out to me. Anyone can do it, it just takes patience. And she was definitely right about patience. In that 5-second film, it took around 6 months of off and on work. Each frame took around 6 hours to complete, and in total there's 32 frames to this film. That's nearly 200 hours of work for one person. You can see why using cross-stitching as the main medium in movies would just take forever. And unfortunately, this goes for all the other fun materials that were shown previous to this. Time is a huge concern when it comes to making stop-motion movies, and over the years in the stop-motion world, they've come up with different tricks that companies like LAIKA's has come up to cut down the time process. Whoa. Before we move on to modern day technologies used in movies, I wanted to take a moment and highlight where stop motion started. And like most things are answered by asking questions, like how horses run. Now, this isn't the first proof of stop motion, but it's also a very significant moment in history. Like these paintings here, you can see that we used to not know how horses run. They were simply too fast for the human eye to see. So these artists would paint horses like this, and they look so wonky, but that's because we know how they run now. Before this, we did not. It wasn't until Leland Stanford, a proud horse owner, put an end to this question, lining up 24 cameras to go off within milliseconds of each other to capture the horse and the rider. Using this photo as a reference, you can see how we were able to understand
exactly how horses run now, through the power of stop motion.
Nowadays, productions use around half the cameras with more purposeful intent behind this. What I mean by this is having different viewpoints while continuing to shoot straight on. Unlike Stanford, who could only shoot straight on with the 24 cameras he was provided with. After looking at the past, I want to jump straight into the production of Coraline by the company's LAIKAs. They are a very well known company in the stop motion world and have won multiple awards, including the Academy Motion Picture Arts and Science Award and the Scientific Engineering Award, which was awarded in 2016, even though the movie was released in 2009. This movie has critics talking for years and completely changed the way that people produce stop motion. For starters, let's continue to look at the cameras, because this was the first stop motion movie to ever be fully shot with a stereoscope 3D camera.
Whoa, slow your roll. That's not a good example of what the camera looks like. This is a better example of what the stereotypic 3D camera looks like that they used on set. You'll notice that it has two lenses with one camera, taking two pictures at once. This allowed the film directors to play with the depth shown on screen. But why does it matter? It's because they weaved it into the storytelling. Using this scene right here, it was used as the contrast in between Coraline's world and the other mothers. When she opens up the portal, you can see the 3D depth that was used. It seems like you're getting pulled into that world even.
As you can imagine, this got a pretty positive result from the world of movie critics. Los Angeles Times remarked that the film in which the 3D experience feels eccentric to the story instead of a god-forsaken gimmick. This is a huge win for the company. But not only that, let's circle back to one of the awards, the Scientific Engineering Award given in 2016. This all started with one man.
This is Brian McLean. He played the role of facial structure supervisor on the set of Coraline. His team came up with the revolutionary idea of using a 3D printer to create the doll's faces seen on screen. He stated the process was developed to harness the power of computer in order to provide the production with more facial options for the puppets, rendering them capable of unprecedented range of sophisticated expressions.
When he said there was more facial expressions, he really meant that there was 207,000 facial expressions unlocked with Coraline's face. To put this into perspective, the main character from The Nightmare Before Christmas, Jack Skellington, had around 400, while they were all hand-painted instead of 3D printed. But this brilliant use of technology allowed Coraline to have 518 times more facial expressions. As great as this technology has been, they did cheat the rules just a little.
There was a little bit of CGI added into this movie, scenes that contained snow, the ghost children, and to help blend some of the facial expressions.
Even with all this newfound technology that LAIKA was using, they still wanted the handcrafted feel that stop motion has, and you can find this within the outfits and the puppeteering skills on set. These three elements of the movie make it easy to see why it changed the way that stop motion movies are being created today. Mihaila Mihova is an assistant teacher at the School of Cinema at San Francisco State University, and she spent most of her life studying film. And she also recognizes that the future of LAIKA has made. Quoting, "The digital process has certainly propelled LAIKA into mainstream, too, and will likely continue to shape both the studio's filmmaking approach and the creativity identity for years to come." LAIKA has definitely earned the respect from critics to watchers at home like you and me. They're releasing a new stop motion movie that has been in the works since 2011. I cannot wait to see what this movie brings to the table. With that movie being in the works for over a decade old, how do they continue to find the funding for these movies? Well, big companies tend to look for private investors and using the overlapping money that is used. But for small creators, which are most stop motion animators, use personal savings, grants, and crowdfunding. Sounds a little bit like finding funding for college. Small-time creators seem to overcome twice as many hurdles as big companies do like LAIKA, but they always seem to have some type of luck to finish the race.
The Rivals is a stop-motion movie that has overcome the biggest hurdle of them all, death. Starting production was in the early 1970s. David Allen had a vision for a sci-fi movie with both live-action and stop-motion components, as seen here.
Already not starting the best, the plotline to the movie was a little unclear, but they were able to get through the live action recording process before they ran into a big problem. In 1990, this is when the movie officially ran out of funding. This left Alan to continue on his work all by himself until he died of cancer. The movie's progress was left unfinished for nearly a whole decade until the miracle finally came. People of the internet came together to finish David's dream. They tried their best to keep the original art style and the original scenes that was already made, and was finally published to the public in 2018. While the story had a fairy tale ending, most small-time creators of stop motion do not. It is the hard reality of creating art, and a very important thing to understand when diving into this world. This is why it was added to this video on how to create a stop motion masterpiece. Well, our time is coming to an end, and I hope you enjoyed my little infomercial about what happens behind the camera for stop motion. With you now understand the beauty of the craftsmanship that is put into these films. I think Henry Silk, a man who has co-directed so many stop motion productions, puts it best. It's the imperfections in stop motion that I think make it attractive, that brings the audience in. Otherwise, there would be no point in perfection. We would be doing computer generated. There's still so much that I want to talk about, but I have to go watch Coraline again and look for all the small details I missed. Thank you for your time.